Right, so we'll kick off. So welcome everyone. I'll just give you a little overview of what we're going to be doing with our time. I'm going to say a few words and introduce things, and then the bulk of our time we're going to be hearing from our wonderful guests, the winning team and coach from this year's Schools Mace, who will share their thoughts, insights, random brain meanderings, who knows, with you in a hopefully useful way. And then there'll be a chance at the end for people to ask questions. So if you pop any questions or thoughts you have into the Q&A, we'll get to as many of those as we can towards the end. So hi everyone, welcome to this Mace Q&A webinar, and thank you very much for taking the time out of your schedule on this very autumnal day to join us here. To introduce myself, I'm Gavin Illsley. I'm head of programs here at the ESU, and so I oversee all of our educational work. I've got a very long history with the ESU. I took some of my early steps in public speaking and debating through the ESU competitions, let's say some years ago, back when I was at secondary school myself, and I've stayed involved with the charity one way or another ever since. The competitions are a real kind of highlight of our work for me and of our year. Sometimes at the finals, getting to see these wonderful performances, but also even right back at the first rounds, when you see people perhaps for the first time standing up and expressing themselves and sharing their ideas. It can be, it's a really special and formative moment. So we're joined here, as I say, by the winning team, who are going to share some of their thoughts about competition and oracy more generally. Before we jump into that, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the ESU, what we are, a little bit about the competition, and then we'll jump over to hearing from our guests. So who are the ESU? We're an international oracy education charity with membership all around the world. We were founded in 1918 by a journalist called Evelyn Wrench, who had a vision that if we could all communicate and talk better, it would lead to sort of more world peace and more harmony and unity, which I think is a wonderful message, which has sometimes worked better than others in the 100 years or so since, but is a great thing to aspire to. And today, the ESU kind of takes those aims of cross-cultural exchange and education forward, partly through our competitions and the other educational programs that we deliver. Oracy is something we think is incredibly important in literacy development, in broader learning, and even more so after the recent pandemic and the way it's worsened the word gap and particularly impacted young people from disadvantaged backgrounds. We think there is so much, and we know there is so much work to do. And so the ESU, we're looking to deal with that disadvantage, supporting all sorts of young peoples, teachers, schools, and beyond, with effective oracy programs to improve people in these areas, wherever they're coming from and wherever they're going to next. And every year, our competitions and the programs that support them enhance critical oracy skills, develop critical thinking, listening, response, expression, and all those incredibly powerful skill sets. So the Schools Mace itself, the competition in particular that we're here to talk about. Some of you, I think, will likely know about this. For some people, this will be new. For others, a refresher. So it was founded in 1957. It's the oldest and I think the most prestigious debating competition of its kind, open to school students at secondary across England. And as of this year, Wales as well. We're extending it over there this year too. Logistically, the Mace consists of 4 rounds. The first round will be held in November over Zoom. Then for those who progress in late January, the second round is held face-to-face. Then towards the end of February and early March we have regional finals. And then finally, the winners of the 12 regions will progress to finals day in late March at our beautiful headquarters, Dartmouth House, which you'll see behind me. And there they compete for 2 teams to make their way to the grand final, where ultimately then one winner is crowned. At each stage, students get in-depth feedback from our judges, who are experienced judges and skilled debaters. And the Mace allows students to engage in kind of a really wide range of topics across and beyond the curriculum, while also developing all those oracy and expression skills. It's an immersive, challenging, supportive, and I think most importantly, fun competition, which we hope to demonstrate and hear a little bit more about over the next half hour. But before, when we get into that, and before I start asking my questions, I'd love our guests to introduce themselves. So I'll start off with Mr. Noel and then hear from the team.
Hi there, I'm Ed Noel. I teach English and I'm Deputy IB Coordinator at Tonbridge Grammar School, and I coach debating. I've been doing it for a few years, but I think last year was our first kind of year of entering competitions and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Brilliant. And shall we have the big group and then go to Alo and Nana?
So my name's Holly. I've been debating since the start of year 11. I'm now in year 12 and I've really enjoyed it. And it's been a very steep learning curve and I've made a lot of friends and grown in a lot of confidence, I think.
Hi, I'm Ellen. I've been debating the same amount of time as Holly, and the Mace competition that we won was actually the first competition that I ever entered for debating. So it was quite lucky that I won. But yeah, debate has been a big part of helping me grow in confidence and just learning oracy skills and enjoying myself.
Hi, I'm Izzy. I'm in year 13 now and I started debating in year 12, doing the debating matters.
Hi, I'm Ello. I'm also in year 12 and I've been debating since year 11, like everyone else here, most people here. And my first competition was also the ESU Mace debating competition.
Hi, I'm Anna. I have debated on and off for quite a while, but I started, I think, formally in year 11 and I'm now in year 12. And yeah, it's been an amazing experience. I think definitely with the ESU, it's built up my confidence and it's made me, I think, the person who I am today. So.
Fabulous. That is a remarkable hit rate for so many of you. No pressure for this year. So to begin with, it'd be really nice to get kind of a broad overview. So starting with Mr. Noel, but everyone else feel free to chime in. What does kind of oracy mean to you, and what does it look like at your school?
Well, I think oracy is important, and all the students spoke about increased confidence, and I think that that's a really big part of it, and it's having a space where they can express themselves. And I do think the structure of debating is such that you know, it's a dedicated 5 minutes or 7 minutes where they can be basically uninterrupted to express themselves and their views. And I think that that kind of quiet space where they're not going to be kind of talked over, or they can kind of have the time to think through their ideas, is second to none in terms of developing confidence, which is a really difficult thing to develop in any other way, as far as I can tell. And so oracy is really important. But also I kind of think that there's oracy and there's also debating, and they do kind of cross over. But I think that the debating is really important as well, and that's also about listening and engaging with each other's ideas and with real world issues. And well, we can talk more about that, but I think that's one of the great things about the Mace competition and the long prep aspect of that.
Fabulous, thanks. Is there anything anyone on the team would sort of like to say about oracy at your school, the access you have to it? Is that something that was always there, or what are your thoughts on that?
I think, well, the opportunity to start debating, I think at Talks at the beginning of year 11 was a great way to develop oracy, because I think that oracy is not only being able to public speak, but being able to get your message across in a way that's convincing and in a way that actually impacts people. And I think that's the core of it. And that's why debating matters so much in it, because in reality, it is convincing other people of your side. And that's why I guess it appealed to all of us so much, because it's such an influential thing, whether you want to use it in the future or not, to be able to convince people and to be able to communicate effectively. So the fact that it was accessible, I think, from the beginning was a very important thing. And the way that it was a longer term thing allowed us to develop and get better, because I know that we were changed people from the time that we had begun, but to the time that we had finished. So yeah, I think the availability was definitely there, and it definitely helps wildly in the long run.
Any other thoughts on that one?
I'm just sort of coming off from a point that Miss Noel made. I think sort of oracy it's equally important to engage in the speaking part as well as the listening, because I really do believe that oracy is also about sharing perspectives and engaging with other people and ensuring, like, bringing a community together. You know, in debating club at Tonbridge Grammar School is a really close-knit community, and like Holly said earlier, we've made some best friends through debating. And I think as much as you can be on opposing sides in debate, I think debating drills down to the core skills of listening, engaging, communicating, thinking, and problem solving. And those are so vital for any job or any career and sort of any subjects that you want to take in the future. And I think that's why debating has helped all of us so much.
I also would add that I think oracy is a lot about peace, as well as being able to do something that's like kind of not selfish, but self-gratifying, because it's like being able to communicate your idea without other people interjecting and having kind of an angry argument. And what debating does is it makes the argument more abstract and makes it less of conflicting opinions and more of, here's an idea, here are the different sides, and then now you can form your own opinion, which is what I really like about it.
Well, that's lovely. Thank you very much. I can see one or two people in sort of the attendees have questions, by the way. I believe you should be able to sort of type those in, and then we can look at those and pick them up a little bit later. So if you've got questions, do pop them in for us. So to pick up on that, so between quite a few of you, this being your first competition, and then you mentioned kind of the wider club around you, how did you go about preparing for the Mace? I know for quite a few of the people we've got listening in, this might be their school or their team's first time taking part in this competition. It can be a little bit daunting. You got given your draw and your topic, and then what next?
So personally, I started preparing by sort of like brainstorming with the rest of the group some ideas generally surrounding our topic and surrounding the side that we had to argue. And then followed that through by sort of putting it out into a speech, putting it out into a plan, and then sort of getting them to grill me on it almost. Yeah. We had quite a big shared document where we'd all add ideas and we'd all add like thoughts and like critiques of stuff and sort of like points of information that we would ask each other and that sort of thing. And it was quite helpful to just go through that as a team and have everyone put in their input, because sometimes it's quite difficult to think up of those things yourself, you know?
Yeah, I think the big thing is have lots of communication within your team, like make sure that you really understand what everyone's doing. And I think just starting off, like Izzy said, with brainstorming and get sort of some thorough baseline research done, perhaps even on both sides, even though you are arguing and you want to win for both sides. I think it's important that you, especially in the Mace where you've got an opportunity to really prepare and have a good amount of time to go really in depth on a topic, I think it's important to get a good amount of research done, and then you're able to consolidate that into a speech later.
I don't think I can emphasize what Ellen said enough of having a tight-knit kind of community and communication among teams, because I think that the idea with the Mace, the fact that you have this time to refine your speech, you need to be able to criticize each other without kind of having taking that personally. I think that being able to tell people what you actually believe about their speech or telling them ways they can improve it was, I'm so glad that I was at least friends with the people on my team, because if not, I think I would have come off very badly. But yeah, I think that communication is definitely necessary, and also research on, like, definitely on both sides, because as a WIP speaker, it was an amazing opportunity to be able to actually lay out what research you think that the other team would also be doing. So yeah, I think definitely, like what Ellen said, really resonates.
Just to jump in, we took, certainly in the final debates and maybe the regional final ones, the team were prepared as they possibly would be going into the round, and then we took it to the club. We took it to our debating club and had the rest of the kind of club kind of come at them, and it was a really kind of, the perfect environment that you would want that to be in. It wasn't kind of confrontational, but people were really kind of had done the research on the opposite side and came at them with them. I think the other thing to bear in mind is, I think we learned pretty early that you could possibly be over prepared, and certainly when it came to whip speeches, that you didn't want to keep it. So with a few of your in proposition, you can kind of run that opening line, whatever happens, but you can be over prepared in terms of assuming what the other side were going to say. So they had to be prepared to change course midway through the debate.
Fabulous. And just stick with you for a little bit, Mr. Noel. How did you, I mean, that all sounds fantastic, but I'm well aware that like time is pretty much the most valuable resource in schools and in a teacher's day. How did you kind of manage that? How did you fit doing all this around everything else?
Yeah, well, I mean, the students were really fantastic and did, spent a huge amount of their time researching and preparing. And by, the time we'd done a couple of rounds, bearing in mind it was our first time with the Mace, he took us a couple of rounds to kind of get our heads around the structure of the speeches and the structure of the debate. And by the time I'd got my head around that, they'd already gotten their head around it. So they were able to do an awful lot independently. And when it came to the motions being delivered, we would sit down and kind of they would discuss amongst the five of them which of the three would do it, and of their strong points. And then we run our weekly club, and we integrated it into that really. And then the events were after school and really kind of easy and accessible to go to. So it certainly never felt like a kind of time burden. And I suppose a lot of time did go into it, but it always seemed like a very sound investment of time.
Fabulous. So back then to the team, and obviously it went very well in the end, but nothing's entirely easy. What were the biggest challenges you found? And we haven't heard from you in a little bit, Elo. Do you want to kick us off?
For me, I think the biggest challenge was definitely thinking about what the other team would say, and finding effective ways to rebut it. Because, you would like to ideally have the other team not to have very good points, but they will inevitably. So we need to think of very good ways to say that we won, we are the better side, and we have the better points. And also another challenging part is handling the floor debate questions, because I'm not sure if everyone knows the format of the Mace debating, but after the first four speakers, there is like a 20-minute floor debate where the audience can come and ask questions to either side. So if you're the last speaker, you would have to handle those questions. So it'd be quite hard because you have to think on your feet and answer the questions and integrate it with your speech. So that would be quite a hard part as well for me.
I'd also say that just the content of the arguments of the debates were quite adult and quite grown up and quite complicated to deal with. Like, you'd find yourself, because you had quite a lot of time to prepare, you'd find yourself going down lots of different rabbit holes and coming up with like a strong mechanism that was, infallible was very, very difficult. And I also think it really helped to kind of clear up all of those concepts with Mr. Noel, and also talking about it with other people in our year, other people in debate club, and even my parents were quite helpful with just like random questions that I had while I was preparing. So don't be afraid to ask anyone when you find the actual motions quite difficult to grasp.
Anna, you didn't find anything difficult?
No, of course, I think I found things difficult. I think most of the bases were covered, but I think that for us, at least, during because we were in year 11 at the time, a lot of the MACE preparation actually happened during our 2 sets of mocks. So I think balancing them was quite a difficult juggling act, actually. But I found myself actually looking forward to preparing for the MACE because it ended up being current affairs and things that weren't actually that didn't require the kind of preparation I was doing for like other things, which were like sciences. And it ended up being a nice break from that, I think. And it was a nice way to communicate with friends. Like on evenings, we'd have calls and we could like discuss things, or we could be on the Google Doc at the same time. And I think that that was quite a bit of comfort during the same thing, that we're all going through the same thing together. But I think that, yeah, I can't deny that that was a little bit difficult at points. So yeah.
Fabulous. That's all really interesting challenges, and great to see how well you all sort of rose to them and dealt with those. That's great. Taking a slightly broader lens for a moment and starting at least with Mr. Noel, is the MACE and kind of debating something that you've drawn any lessons or inspirations from in kind of your wider teaching? Is it something that's made its way into kind of your day-to-day practice at all?
Yeah, definitely. I think it goes both ways. Very broadly, like across the school, there was such a buzz about how well this team were doing. So when people wanted to run kind of HSE sessions across the school, doing a kind of a debate with year 8, they would kind of ask us out for format ideas and motion ideas. And so just the kind of buzz of having these guys doing so well really did go across the school and stimulate debate. Specifically, in lessons, I suppose I was more confident in having debates and giving motions out in plenty of time for people to go off and revise. But similarly, there are things that I do as a teacher, and as I'm sure some colleagues here will do as teachers, which apply equally well in debating, right? So any kind of speaking and listening activity which you run as a class, any kind of group work and the structure of group work can feed back into the debating classroom. It's not mutually exclusive. You don't need to have a background in debating in order to be able to run a successful debating club. I think it's a little bit more about culture than it is about technique or content.
Fabulous. Thank you. And thank you to everyone who's popping questions in the Q&A. We'll get to those in a little bit, and do keep putting them in there if you have any more. Back then to the team, what's your favourite memory of your time in the MACE?
I think there are easily too many to count, but I remember there was this one, I think it was a lunchtime or during an independent study, that I was sat with a couple of my MACE teammates in the library, and it was quite close to the date of which we had one of these competitions. And I remember looking through and like reading and just laughing so much with like the teammates, just about like the research we'd done or things we'd found from the other team. And it was just an amazing experience to be like, I think almost alone in the library and just having such a great time, even though it was technically work or technically things we should have been focusing on. But also like the late night talks on the Google Docs of like leaving little dialogues between one another or leaving little comments for later reference. I think it was just such an amazing experience that made me closer to these 4 other wonderful people. And it was just such an amazing experience overall.
I think for me personally, I mean, obviously winning the competition was amazing, but I think we did our debate in this room here, which is actually Mr. Noel's classroom. It was when we were in here and it was the debate that got us into the final. I think we were so nervous and we were all crowded around a laptop, like waiting for the result because only one team was going through. And I think throughout the competition, because it was a lot of the group's first debating competition, we never expected in a million years, or at least personally, to be able to get into a final and win. So I think it was the confidence boost and sort of the validation that we all needed, and that feeling, it was so euphoric when we got into the final. We were all in this classroom and it was fairly late in the evening and it was sort of cold in winter, and we knew we'd got to the final and it was
I just failed my driving test.
and we knew we were going up to London, and it was just like, it was so nice.
It was very unexpected. We really weren't expecting to get into the final with the other teams that we went up against. It was just so surprising and really, really exciting.
But like, I can't emphasize how rewarding the competition is. However far you get in the Mace competition, whether you get to the final or you just make it to the first round, I think the feedback that you get and the experience that you get is such a huge takeaway for everyone, and value every moment in the Mace competition. I think each round I think it's so crucial to take on board the advice and really just grab the competition with both of your hands and just make the most of it, because it's been one of the most rewarding and like cool things that I've done. Do you
know? For me, I would say finals day, because the other 3 rounds were all online, and that was fun, like hanging together in the classroom at 7 p.m. But going to Dartmouth House was really, really cool, especially because it has so much history there and it's a really pretty place. And that was my first live debate, so that was quite special as well.
That's incredible. And there are 1 or 2 questions about that kind of process of debate and debating over Zoom that we'll come to in just a second. For one last round of questions from me to the group, and I'll start with Mr. Noel and then go to the team, given I just picked on them. I'd just like one bit of advice, big or small, that you would give to a team, teacher or student entering the competition, particularly for the first time.
Okay, I've got, if I can sneak 2 in, that'd be really helpful. I think some advice which I always give the team is always listen to what the judges tell you, win or lose, and make notes about it, especially because I think one of the quite good things about the Mace competition is there is criteria, there's published criteria about how that you're marked against, that you're judged against. So there's transparency there, and the feedback was absolutely phenomenal and really in depth. And we had to wait for it for quite a while sometimes, because they do go into so much depth with quite a lot of the speakers, but it always was so valuable when we got it. And I do think, every time we got it, we made notes on it. We're implementing it, the team were implementing it next time, it really paid off. And the other thing I'd say is rule number 1 at our debate club, which is to have fun. Rule number 2 is structure, but rule number 1 is to enjoy it. And if we'd have been knocked out in the first round but enjoyed it, that would have been better than making it to final and not enjoying it. And there's so much fun to be had with it, and camaraderie and kind of good spirit and good humor, that to not lose sight of that. And the point at which students look as though they're kind of taking it too seriously, or it's getting kind of more confrontational than it needs to, I definitely put the brakes on and try and have a bit of a timeout. So feedback on judges from the judges, and to enjoy it as much as possible.
Fabulous. And a couple of hints from the team, hints or tips.
I personally would just say to not be too intimidated, especially if you're someone doing it for the first time, because everyone seems like they're really, really on it and really good and stuff like that. And
it was
just
our first time.
Yeah. And not to be too intimidated or too nervous, because other people seem very confident.
I would say if it's your first time doing a debate competition, you need to be very clear on who's taking what points and what your like umbrella points actually are, and be very clear in your speeches that this is my point, this is my point, this is what I've told you, and make sure that you differentiate between each speaker, I think.
And also to practice the speeches out loud, because something that I think all of I think all of us struggled with was the like time limit and making sure that we got everything in there in time, and also left time for points of information, because those were the ones that caught us out, I think.
sort of like, I think this has been picked up before, but like communication within the team, make sure that you know what everyone else is saying, so you don't get any repetition or you don't have any like inconsistency within the arguments, and just have some belief in yourself and some confidence. I was very nervous when I first spoke, and when I did my first ever debate, which wasn't in the Mace, I remember stood there with my paper shaking, and it was, to be honest, a pretty awful first experience. But I don't be sort of upset or be put off debating just because it may not go perfectly. I don't think any of us can sit here and say that the speeches that we did were absolutely perfect, but I think it's about a team effort and working together as a team and making sure that you've got a really clear, strong argument.
Yeah, I think similarly on that point, from a preparation point of view, at least, make sure you're still on your feet though, because I guess in the tendency in Mace, because you have this time and because you think of it like a speech, it's very easy to write things out and think that, yes, this is what I'm going to say in the moment. But no, there's so many like junctions and issues in the moment and in the debate, because you have to like address points of information or questions from the floor. So make sure that you have that kind of team kind of narrative where they can tell you things that will keep you on your feet, that tell you criticisms, even if it's like really close to the date of the debate, because you should be able to formulate and change and mold depending on like what the debate is going to be like and what the other like questions that will be brought up or points of information, because you don't know how it's going to go, despite no matter how much preparation you do, it'll never be like that. And I can also definitely understand, do time yourself before. We've all made that mistake. It's not an easy thing to try and predict.
I would say engage with the other debates, because normally you have like 2 or 3 debates going on in an evening. So after you finished, definitely listen to the other debates instead of like talking over it or just, I don't know, sleeping or thinking about like what you said and going over it. Like definitely listen, because you can give the questions in the floor debate and that would only positively impact how the judges think of you. So if you're giving quite insightful questions and actually like showing that you care about other people's debates, that will help you in the long run.
Fabulous. Thank you very much. And in classic debater style, asked for 1 point each. I think there was an average of 3 tips per person there, which is good. Right, so we'll jump over now to the Q&A. I'll pick up everything that's in there. And also, if anything else comes up as we're going through. So there are a couple that are related around team size. So first of all, in terms of the team composition, in any single debate in the Mace, there are 3 speakers involved. Team size is allowed to be up to 5, and that can be, as ably demonstrated by this team, sort of rotated between rounds. And as I think they've made very clear, everyone in the team is really valuable and really important in that preparation process as well. In terms of recommended size, I wouldn't say there's necessarily one recommendation or not. Some people have just a team of 3 that speak throughout. Others use the squad system to have 4 or 5 to rotate. And all those approaches are, I think, great and valuable. Related to that, we've got a question here, which I'll pass over to you, Mr. Noel. How do you select a team of 5 when you have lots of students interested?
Yeah, that's really tough. We do trials for some competitions, and I think we're going to have to do trials for Mace this year. the only advice that I can give if you've got more people wanting to debate than there are places for is enter a range of competitions. We did trials for another competition, and this one, just came along, and I knew that these 5 students, it was kind of up their street, so I offered it to them. I don't think I could do that again this time. I don't think we could just approach 5 students and put them for the Mace squad. We're going to have a system. I think you guys might have privilege over it. You might be able to have some credibility. But yeah, we might have to do trials. But yeah, they can be scheduled and release in motion. I'm very lucky that there's a few other teachers that are really interested in debating here as well. And so we have a few rooms running when we do debating club, and you can get through a few people at the same time. I mean, when you're making that choice, you can make the decision based on who is the strongest debater, or you can make it on the basis of who's going to get the most out of it. And I think that the latter is probably more worthwhile. So yeah, there's lots of criteria.
Fabulous, thanks for that. And that's, gosh, it's a problem I hope every school in the country has sooner or later, is too many people interested in the Mace to get on the team. So I'm going to just run through quickly some very kind of structural issues to get kind of an overview of it, and then on Zoom in particular. And then there's a good one here about other opportunities since that I'll pop back to the panel. So for an overview of the Mace generally, it's a structure of debate where there's one team on each side, sort of 2 teams facing off against each other. You'll be given the topic well in advance, which gives you the time to prepare that the team talked about. And you'll be told what your topic is and which side you're on. Having prepared about it on the day, each side has 3 speakers. There are 2 sort of main constructive speakers, and it alternates back and forth. Those speeches are up to 7 minutes long. And during that time, the speaker has a chance to lay out arguments for their own side, rebut and respond to things from the other side. And there'll also be some interjections in the form of what are called points of information during that speech, which they can choose to take a couple of and respond to directly in their speech. After that, as I think Ello mentioned, there's a floor debate when the audience gets a chance to ask questions, make points, generally argue and disagree with each other in a respectful way. And after that, the final speaker on each side, the summary speaker or reply speaker, gives a 5-minute speech, which kind of wraps up the debate, responds to some of the floor debate, and generally tells us why their side has won. So that's kind of how it progresses. In an individual heat, there might be 2 or 3 of those debates going on, and a number of those teams will advance. So, and that's always the best performances overall. So you can lose your debate, and if there were, say, 3 teams going through, it might be that debate was so good that even though one other team was better than you and beat you head to head, you still progress, which I think is nice. So one unlucky draw sort of doesn't take you out. So that's a very quick overview of how it works. If you want to see more, if you look on our website, we've got obviously the handbooks there, but also links to some nice recorded examples where you can see, I can't remember if you can see these 5 in their moment of glory at the moment or not, but we have a number of really good debates up there if you want to look. And you can always get in touch with us with questions as well. So how it works on Zoom is much like it otherwise would have someone sort of in my role chairing it and often judging it at the same time. We would call on one speaker at a time to give their speeches, and they would talk just as this lovely lot have. When offering points of information, the other speakers just need to make it clear. I think very often that would be by popping in the text chat and just say, point of information, so that pops up. Some people prefer to ask that someone physically waves a meet hand, or one of the Zoom hands you can put up to interject. And then you'd pop over to the next speaker. So very much like in person, but just sort of through the Zoom platform. I'll pop it over back actually as probably more recently experienced in doing lots of this than me. Is there anything else that sort of you six would like to add on how it works over Zoom?
Possibly the fact that because you're watching other debates, you can actually ask questions during them. Also, like as Ella mentioned as her hint, to like also not only show that you're engaged, but often they're really interesting topics. So it often ended up being questions that we were actually interested in, and we found ourselves engaging more with the debate to find questions and to find things, and then it makes the debate even more interesting because the summary speakers get more things to talk about, and yeah, I think so. Generally, that's also just another aspect of debating over Zoom, which, because we don't have a live audience, is definitely helpful.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that. And then the follow-up, also on Zoom, you can absolutely join Zoom calls via browser, so you don't need the Zoom app installed. I know that can be an absolute round the houses nightmare with some school policies. So no, you absolutely can join through the browser. Excellent logistical question. Thank you for that one. I just wanted then to pop this one from anonymous attendee out to Mr. Noel and the team. What other opportunities have you had since winning the Mace? And I'm really interested in the answer to this one as well.
I mean, we've had so many opportunities, and sort of not only within school and sort of with like the school debating club, but we got invited by Lord Boateng for a tour of the House of Lords and afternoon tea with the ESU and sort of their annual debating celebration event. And that was sort of really nice to talk to other people at the ESU. And I think Ella will go on to mention this, but she got to speak there and got to talk about the importance of diversity in debate. So that was really nice. But the ESU constantly come back to us with new opportunities, and I'm going to be introducing a speaker that they're having at a lecture in October. So that's just another nice opportunity to really get involved and be involved in the debating community. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think Ella and I also had recently, in the beginning of the academic year, we had the amazing opportunity to speak and debate alongside Christopher Steele and Bill Browder, who were two like larger than life figures that were amazingly tied to the ESU. And I think we both had an amazing time. Like, despite the fact that we worked during our summer holidays, I think I can speak on my behalf at least that I had a great time doing it. And it was like massively rewarding at the time. And I met so many amazing people, not only during the debate, but afterwards as well. So yeah, that was an amazing opportunity. And we also like have enjoyed going to debates before from the ESU, like the debate about cryptocurrencies that Ella and I had attended before. But I'm sure Ella can go on to speak about her opportunities.
Yeah, so as Ellen said, I gave a speech at the House of Lords about the importance of diversity within debate, which was really cool. And it's a topic that I'm quite passionate about, so it was nice to talk about it in front of people. But yeah, just overall, the ESU is such a cool institution. Like, you can do so much there, and they really champion young people. And they like, it's kind of cool that they just let us who like we're only 16 and 17, but we can still do all of this, and we can still like have debates and give talks and things. So yeah, it's cool.
We've been called many things over the years. That might be the first time as an institution we've had cool. So thank you very much for that. And everyone, those speeches I've seen were absolutely fantastic. One final question I'll come to quickly and then let everyone away. So is there a limit to the number of points of information you can ask? It's a good one, this, because it's got big it depends energy, which is often the case. So there isn't a formal limit to the number you can ask. There are two important things to say. One is that you shouldn't badger the speaker. You shouldn't sort of be asking them so regularly that you're bothering the speaker by repeatedly asking them. So that's one sort of natural limit. The other limit is that the speaker has the power to accept or decline any points of information that's offered. So if you ask 5, could you in theory get to actually, if you offer 5, could you get to ask 5? In theory, I would strongly encourage speakers not to take 5 points of information and have their speech that disrupted. So long as you're polite, you can keep offering them, but it is unlikely that you will have more than 2 or perhaps 3 taken. Brilliant. And I will wrap things up there. So just to say thank you very much to everyone who's attended, whether you've asked questions or not. I really appreciate your time, and I hope your schools enter and do well in this year's Mace. And particular thanks, of course, to Mr. Noel and the team for their time and sharing their thoughts and their experiences. Thank you all very much for that. And with that, I'll wish you the very best and say farewell. Cheers, everyone. Bye now.
Thanks very much. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck to all the
Good luck,
teams.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you and good luck, everyone.